That vast expanse down there is called the Sonoma Valley, about 50 miles north of San Francisco. And just over those low hills over there is the Napa Valley, where about a century ago, winemakers from Germany and France and Italy discovered that the climate and the soil conditions were similar to places like Burgundy and Champagne and the Rhine Valley in Germany. And since then, they've been producing some of the most elegant and famous vintages in the entire world. The Napa Valley is a beautiful place, lined with lush vineyards and elegant estates, and wineries that look like they might have been lifted intact right out of medieval Europe. It's become a great tourist attraction. Hi, I'm Brock Yates, and today we got a different kind of tourist on hand. Down here in Sonoma, California, that's the Sears Point International Raceway, 2.5-mile road course. And today we're going to see some GT prototypes, IMSA-style 200-mile-an-hour sports cars. We got a highly interesting and unique field. And down there on the grid, for more on the story, is my pal, Steve Evans.
Thank you, Brock. You know, we're looking at the most interesting IMSA GTP grid that we've ever seen. The cars literally come at you in waves. Wave number one, the front row 962 Porsches. A lot of people felt the Porsche was at a disadvantage here at Sears Point. It's a little heavier, and this is a very tight course. But there you see him. Bob Wallach is on the inside, Price Cobb on the outside. Trick qualifying tires? Well, maybe. We'll soon find out. In row number two, we've got a wave of Mustang probes. That's right, the probes are back after a hiatus in which the crews tried to find the problems that were nagging them all season long. The 07 car, however, this morning still had problems in warm-ups. Brock Yates asked co-driver Pete Halsmer if he was concerned.
There was a little problem in the engine, but it was easily corrected. They didn't have to change the motor. They just corrected the problem, and it ran fine. They gave us a lap a little later on and ran like a top.
Well, no concern, as you can hear, on Halsmer's part. And likewise, Klaus Ludwig, who is starting the other probe on the inside of the second row, seems very confident that this could be their day. Back in the third row comes the third wave, the BMW automobiles. They also were out of action after early success. They went back to research and development that has earned them, side by side, third row qualifying position. Back in the fifth row, the beautiful Jaguars. And earlier today, Hurley Haywood took our camera for a ride around Sears Point in the green and white 04 car.
And what a ride it's going to be. Nestled on the edge of the Sonoma Valley, Sears Point International Raceway is a multi-purpose facility built as a road course, drag strip, and driver training school. The racetrack is a spectacular combination of 2.52 miles, 12 turns. And like its sister racetrack down the coast at Monterey, Laguna Seca features a number of elevation changes.
And the car Hurley was driving is the XJR7 Jaguar, featuring the normally aspirated aluminum V12 racing engine. Hurley Haywood, one of the winningest drivers in IMSA history, a past Le Mans champion.
Established much of his early reputation in the early 70s as a co-driver with the late, great Peter Gregg.
Here was Hurley threading his way through the pit area to join the course at turn number one. The pits are on your left there. At the top of the screen is actually turn number 12, the start-finish line beyond that.
This is the actual pit straight as Hurley threads his way toward the start-finish line right underneath that bridge. Ahead is turn one, a very fast left-hander that leads into a series of uphill corners as the racetrack threads its way along the slope of the Sonoma Valley.
And it's one of the most physically difficult in this country. There is just no place to relax. In the lower center of your screen, that is turn number 3. Coming up to the hard turn number 4, bending off to the right, kind of like the head of a snake.
Passing is very difficult in this section at Sears Point as the racetrack begins to funnel its way back down off the hillside to more level ground. Up ahead lies turn number 5 and 6. Now they are in a hollow and the corner is very tight to the left. Great spectating area as the car is set up for one of the few straightaways on this circuit.
Let's see how Hurley negotiated the part of the course we just talked about, coming uphill to crest out at turn number 3. Drivers are taking positive and negative G's in these elevation changes. And here's turn 4, the right-hander.
As you see him sweeping through that corner, here is where the racetrack begins to move downhill, as we said before. Quite a bit of speeds built up here. A lot of blind crests and corners at Sears Point. There ahead is turn 5, that tight left-hander we discussed. And ahead turn 6, and the straightaway, what's called the back straight. Slightly uphill, maybe 160 miles an hour. The lap speeds here at Sears Point right on 107 miles an hour.
Now, I'll tell you, this course will wear out your shifting glove. You're never in any one gear for more than a few seconds at a time. And there's what they call the carousel, one of 3 180-degree turns on this course.
Actually, that is what slows the racetrack down, these big 180-degree sweepers. As you see Hurley bend that Jaguar through that corner. This racetrack, part of the racetrack, can get very, very slippery during a long event.
So Hurley is out of the carousel, headed down what they call the S's, turns 8 and 9, and pretty well flat out here, Brock.
Yes, it is. For a GTP car, it is a blind crest at turn 9, and up ahead, turn number 10, which is the fastest corner on the racetrack. Very nearly flat out for the prototypes, but a little bit of braking and a downshift. Up ahead, the last straightaway leading into the tightest and perhaps the most spectacular corner on the course.
And with the camera in Hurley's car, we get a feeling for that speed through turn 10 here. But all of a sudden now he's got to get on the brakes, downshift quickly for turn number 11, 180 degrees.
A radius almost like a half-mile asphalt circle track, Steve, and a lot of passing done as the cars outbrake each other going into that corner. Here's turn 12, a fast left-hander to finish up one lap here at the very difficult Sears Point International Raceway.
Well, we'd like to thank Hurley Haywood, the entire Jaguar Group 44 team, for allowing our camera on board. What a ride, what a racetrack.
It is indeed. 2.52 miles, as you said, almost 110-mile-an-hour lap speed in a very challenging circuit.
There will be co-drivers in the majority of these cars. The drivers we're showing you right now are those starting the automobiles. Bob Wallach and Price Cobb in those Porsches up front. Klaus Ludwig and Pete Halsmer in the probes, followed by the BMWs. John Andretti, Mario's nephew, and David Hobbs in one of those BMWs. Elliott Forbes Robinson, he may try to drive nonstop in the Nissan GTP car. Al Hobart and Derek Bell will share in the famous 14 Porsche.
That's right. Then come the Jaguars, and then Sarah Vandermeer starting out in the Corvette GTP car that has been so fast on the faster circuit. They've had some problems here qualifying, but you can be sure that they will be a factor if they get that very potent automobile ready to go.
All of the factory teams are involved here today in the California Ford Grand Prix, and we'll be back for a start right after this.
This special presentation of American Sports Cavalcade is being brought to you by B.F. Goodrich, TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Ford and your local Ford dealer, who invite you to see the 1986 Ford Cars and Trucks. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Lowenbrau, brewed in the great beer-drinking countries of the world. This world calls for Lowenbrau.
Is from the number 68 Porsche 962 being driven by European Jochen Mass, a German now living in Monte Carlo, a former Grand Prix driver, and a man to be reckoned with in any prototype race of this kind. So we're almost ready for a start, Steve.
We have a start, in fact, Brock, but look at Bob Wallach. He is just driving away from Price Cobb. I wonder if he didn't over-anticipate that green flag.
Well, it's a difficult place to start a race. You kind of come around that corner, and maybe that he got on the throttle a little bit early, but in any case, Bob Wallach, the brilliant driver from France, is out in front. Right behind him, the Texan Price Cobb. There is the number 7 Ford Probe sitting in 3rd place. That is Klaus Ludwig.
And the BMW is falling into the 4th and 5th spots. John Andretti just ahead of David Hobbs.
So we've got 3 different makes contesting here, and that is one of the great attractions of IMSA racing at this point. So many different brands, all almost evenly matched. As they go down through turn 5, sweep out of turn number 6 and up that back straightaway.
And here's the number 18 and number 19 BMW cars as they head into the carousel. They're powered by the production-based 2.1-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, the same one BMW had so much success in Formula One with.
As is the Ford, that is a 2.1-liter engine as well. So we've got turbocharged cars leading at this particular point. That is Klaus Ludwig, the champion from Germany, who's done so well with the Ford products over the years. There comes Price Cobb in the number 16 Porsche 962, and right behind him, Ludwig, as they head into the final corner here, that spectacular turn number 11. We're going to see some action in here today, I'll guarantee you, Steve.
And you'll find action throughout the pack as well, Brock. Here's the race for 9th in the number 5 car, the red 962. That is James Weaver of England, and trying to get inside him, Hurley Haywood of the 12-cylinder Jag. And here, with the best view of that race, is Jochen Mass.
Absolutely, as they sweep through that very fast left-hander, turn number 1, and head up the hill. There is your leader, Bob Wallach, who got such a good start. Perhaps it's debatable how good it was. We'll see later if they do penalize him. But in any case, he got the jump on young Texan Price Cobb. And right now, Price trying to reel him in. But it's a long way to go. So he'll be patient, I would imagine.
And just behind the probe comes John Andretti in 4th place. And here's a race for 5th between the BMW of Hobbs, the probe driven by Halsmer, and Al Holbert in a Porsche.
That's a little bit of a surprise to have Holbert back there. As you know, he and Derek Bell have dominated this series, but they've had problems during qualifying here and have not gotten that car right. Sears Point is a racetrack that puts a premium on both handling, braking, and top speed, and that combination just has eluded them so far.
Also, it's a very tricky course for the tire companies. They even have a hard time figuring out what compound to run. Some companies have tried as many as 20 of them this weekend.
As we watch Wallach lead Price Cobb off turn number 10, there's the very hard braking point, probably from about 160 miles an hour down to maybe 35 or 40 as they snake their way around turn number 11 and up the pit straight. It looks as if these cars are pretty evenly matched at this point, Steve. Price Cobb not able to move in too much on the wily old veteran Bob Wallach. They say he is as crafty a race driver as there is in the world.
And Price Cobb is one of the steadiest, not as flashy as Wallach, but I think he's making up a little of that ground.
Well, young Price Cobb from Dallas, Texas is a man to be reckoned with in the years to come in this kind of racing and elsewhere. He is a fine, fine driver. He's a good learner. He thinks. He's a thinking man's race driver. And there's no question, as you say, he's going to sit back there and watch the old man lead him around for a few laps before he makes the move on him.
Well, not content to sit back in the 11th spot is Jochen Mass. Here we see him just sawing on the steering wheel of that 962. In the 10th spot is Hurley Haywood, as we can see, just in front of the 68 Porsche. And what you can't quite see, there it is, in the 9th spot is Weaver in the red 962. And here is Haywood trying to make a move with the Jag, but no.
Well, they come up into the carousel. Now, that is Maas trying to dive inside Hurley. Right up. Yes, he does. Jochen Maas makes it stick and moves into the 10th spot in that very tight corner. We're going to see a lot of this in the course of the day, both in the carousel and in the hairpin, as guys will outbrake each other, and that's a good place to pass here. All right, Maas chasing Weaver in that red Porsche 962 down through the S's. Up ahead lies that very fast turn number 10.
Weaver will be co-driving with the car owner, Bob Aiken. Back up in front, it is still Bob Wallach just through there. Following him in the kind of orange and red Porsche is Price Cobb. Cobb still unable to make up any of that ground. Brock, it's exactly
Look at
as
this,
well.
Steve.
We've got a problem with the probe.
Absolutely. As he entered turn number 2, Klaus Ludwig, a burst of smoke from the rear of that car, and now it looks as if maybe there's a suspension problem. It looks as if that left rear tire is rubbing, and he is slowed down radically, and it looks as if he's going to head for the pits. What a tough break for that probe. A very strong start as Klaus Ludwig now slows and eases his way, and it couldn't have happened in a worse place on the racetrack. He's got to go all the way around the track to get back to the pits.
That's right, Brock, and I agree with you. That is a suspension problem. There's absolutely no sign of any smoke from the engine. What we see is coming off the inside of that left rear tire.
All right, the other Ford probe now carries on. That is the 07 car being driven by Pete Halsmer, his co-driver Lynn St. James, and they are now left with the burden of carrying on the Ford colors as Ludwig probably is either out or is going to be in for an extended stop.
And the best race on the course has to be the one for the 4th position. Pete Halsmer and the other probe, as you said, from Anaheim, California. He is in 5th. David Hobbs is just up in front of him in the BMW car.
And right behind him, Al Holbert in the number 14 Porsche. The leaders, that is Bob Wallach, now being challenged a little bit more vigorously by young Price Cobb as they come off the hairpin and head past the pits. But Wallach, a little bit more power perhaps as he pulls away up the hill through turns number 2 and 3. There you have him, Bob Wallach, and right behind him, Price Cobb. Two identical Porsche 962s. Cars, as you said earlier, Steve, weren't expected really to break away from this field. They carry about 150 pounds more weight, a little bit heavier automobiles, and a lot of guys thought, well, it's going to be the Pros and the BMWs that'll put them on them today. But not at this point. We've got 2 Porsches out front here at Sears Point.
And with their heavier weight, they're a good deal harder on tires. So it will be interesting to see when those first pit stops for fuel, tire, and maybe a co-driver will come.
So maybe we'll, as you say, it's possible we'll get a co-driver change. This race is about 180 miles long. Oh, the probe, as expected, Klaus Ludwig into the pits.
And not a pretty sight for the Ford crew. Ludwig shuts the motor down. Ludwig is going to get out of that car. So something is severely broken in the suspension of that automobile. And Ford has just halved their chances of winning the California Ford Grand Prix.
This is the beautiful Sterling Winery just up the road in the Napa Valley, owned by Joseph Seagrams and Sons, the famous distillers. Now, this beautiful edifice was built back in 1964 and is accessible only by a tram that comes up the hill from the valley. Down below, over 500 acres of prime vineyards.
Well, Klaus Ludwig wishes he was out on the sightseeing tour right now, Brock, because he has climbed out of the apparently broken number 7 Ford Probe. The crew is working on the car, but Klaus knows it's going to be a long struggle.
Up ahead, Bob Wallach continues to lead at Price Cobb. John Andretti in the 3rd spot in the BMW, along with David Hobbs, his teammate, Pete Halsmer, and the other Ford, rounding out the top 5.
Al Holbert has pushed his Porsche into the 6th spot. Jochen Mass now at 7th, followed by the steady-performing Nissan of Elliott Forbes Robinson.
Meantime, the race for 9th continues between James Weaver and Hurley Haywood. Jochen Mass, remember, drove right by these 2 guys and got past Elliott Forbes Robinson as well. So he is charging. But right now, these 2 cars pretty much in a stable situation. Hurley tries to move underneath Weaver as they go through the hairpin at the turn number 11, but can't make it work and just sits back there. In the meantime, that is the number 19 BMW of David Hobbs being trailed by Pete Halsmer in the 07 Probe, the only one of the 2 cars left. David Hobbs, of course, one of the real professionals, has driven virtually every kind of racing car, from stock cars to Indianapolis cars, these cars, sports cars, you name it, and has done beautifully in every one of them. Also does pretty good in our trade as well, Steve.
Absolutely. He's a fine broadcaster. You know, he was the IMSA champion for BMW in 77 and 78.
And before that, a Formula 5000 champion, ran very well in Formula 1 when he was a younger man, but now drives these GTP cars as well as anybody. But up ahead of him in the number 3 spot is his teammate, young John Andretti. Now, Andretti is an interesting story. He is the nephew of Mario, the son of Aldo, who is Mario's twin brother. Aldo also had a great racing career when he was younger, had a very bad crash and retired, but now his son, John, along with Mario's son Michael, carry on the Andretti name for a 2nd generation. Down into turn number 11. That is Al Holbert in the number 14 Porsche, diving underneath Pete Halsmer in a hard-braking effort. That's where we said a lot of passing would take place. So Halbert moves up into the 5th spot. Right ahead of him lies David Hobbs in the other BMW. Remember, at the previous IMSA race up in Portland, Oregon, Al Holbert beat out David Hobbs after Hobbs and teammate John Watson had an extended stop near the end that cost them the victory. So David Hobbs certainly is able to run ahead of the number 14 Porsche. These 2 cars evenly matched here at Sears Point at the present time. Okay, right behind them, though, here comes Pete Halsmer. Let's go to Steve with his teammate.
Klaus, so soon to be out of the race. What happened?
Rear suspension broke, something in there. I don't know what it is. We're fixing it.
It looks like the crew is not about to give up.
Yeah. No.
The short time you were out there, your impressions of the racetrack, is it a bit slippery or is it fine?
No, the track is okay. The track is really okay. I was some sort of taking it easy behind the skies. Wallach some sort of made a good start. Maybe a little bit early, but...
Hope to see you back out.
Well, he feels maybe that Bob Wallach got a little bit of a head start, but so far he runs out front without any penalty as the crew, led by crew chief Ian Dawson, continue to try to get that Probe race car back into competition.
And the problem with the car is a broken lower control arm. The A arm is shattered right at the Heim joint. Here's that race for 9. That is James Weaver in the beautiful red 962. And right on him comes Hurley Haywood, the 12-cylinder Jaguar. Now, the Jaguar on some courses and longer races enjoys an advantage from a fuel economy standpoint, but not at this distance. He's just got to outdrive him, and here he comes on the inside in turn 11.
Well, he tried to get underneath them, but as they head up into turn number 12, Weaver holds on. But right now, Hurley Haywood challenges. That, of course, is doing it the hard way up the hill. He can't get by on the outside unless he's vastly superior in speed, which he's not at this particular point. So he falls in behind James Weaver as they head up through turns 3 and 4.
The Jaguar being allowed a bigger motor at 6.5 liters, and that's the engine that's in the 04 car. The team car, the 44 machine, with Bob Tullius and Chip Robinson, they have the smaller 6-liter motor.
The Porsche, of course, carrying a 3.3-liter single-turbo flat 6. Now, IMSA has an interesting formula based on valves per cylinder. 4 valves per cylinder. Pure racing engines are limited to 2.1 liters, like the BMW and the Ford. 2 valve per cylinder racing engines, turbocharged, like the Porsche, are 3.3 liters. The normally aspirated engines like the Jaguar, that V12 gets 6.5 liters, as you said, or almost 400 cubic inches.
Well, there's an old saying, there's no substitute for cubic inches, but I don't think it's accurate anymore, Brock. Turbocharging has more than made up for that.
Well, especially on a racetrack like this. On the longer circuits, as you said earlier, where fuel economy becomes a factor, the Jaguars are very competitive. But on this particular course, it seems as if the turbo cars have an advantage, as we saw that Hurley and teammate Brian Redmond were unable to qualify really up near the leaders.
Hurley unable to outbreak Weaver coming out of turn number 11. And here they are, first and second, the Frenchman Bob Wallach, and just behind him, the Texan Prix Cobb. Now they're coming up on some traffic, and that may be a chance for Cobb to close up this gap. Unless, of course, Wallach, that crafty old pro, can use that traffic to his advantage.
Well, here you see them coming down the hill to sweep through turns 5 and 6. Now, there is no chance to pass in this very tight section of the racetrack, but here comes Prix Cobb moving in a little bit as they head up that straightaway toward the carousel. There's a possibility now. Look at this. Prix Cobb right on the rear tail of Bob Wallach as they move into slower traffic. That's number 73, Steve Phillips, and number 32, Tom Blackaller, who are now in front of the 2 leaders as they head down through the S's and into turn number 10. It'll be interesting to see if these cars in any way get in the way of Wallach and Prix Cobb as they do that hard braking act right in turn number 11, Steve.
Well, there is Wallach. He shoehorns his way between Phillips and Blackaller.
And there goes Prix Cobb as both Phillips and Blackaller move over in sportsmanlike fashion to let the faster cars through.
Tremendous action in front of one of the largest crowds in the history of Sears Point International Raceway. We'll be back.
California Ford Grand Prix at Sears Point International Raceway. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans, and Bob Wallach and Prix Cobb continue to contest for the lead with a pair of BMWs right behind them. Pete Halsmer holding on to 6th place and the only Ford left in the race. And Steve, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. We've got a couple of people that are more interesting by their non-appearance in the top 10. That is the Corvette of Cyril Vandermeer and the other Jaguar, the team car to this Hurley Haywood automobile being driven by Chip Robinson and team owner Bob Tullius. They are not among the top 10, and they should be up among them, believe me.
Well, James Weaver, he's plenty happy to currently be 9th. He's in that red number 5 car, getting a lot of heat from Hurley Haywood, as he has for the past half-dozen laps.
Well, you've got a really first-class field of prototypes running here at Sears Point when a man like Vandermeer in that Corvette and the Tullius Robinson Jaguar are struggling to get into the top 10. So a real contest going on here. But right now, Bob Wallach and Prix Cobb have moved out a little bit. They've got a substantial lead right now. These 2 Porsches have broken away from John Andretti back there in 3rd spot. The 2 BMWs, for that matter. David Hobbs right behind him in 4th. And these 2 Porsches are just about perfectly matched. And I would imagine that Bob Wallach, the wily veteran, as we've said before, I call him an old man. He's not an old man. He's only in his late 30s. But compared to very young, early 20s Prix Cobb, he is kind of an old man. But, of course, we're old men, too, so we know about that.
Speak for yourself, Brock. How about Prix Cobb, though? He has just stayed right in there behind one. He's got a challenge now. Prix Cobb on the outside. He says, hello, I'm here.
Up into the carousel. Now, he put a move on the outside of Wallach, but it was really an impossible place to pass. You could not drive around the outside of a man like Bob Wallach in a tight 180-degree corner like the carousel. But Cobb, I think, moved in on him, maybe to see how the braking situation was, whether Wallach had more brakes or less brakes, and it could be that we'll see another challenge as they move down through turn 10. Up ahead is the hairpin, and could it be that Cobb will try him in here? No, he doesn't. He sits back and lets Wallach lead it out of there. I thought maybe after that challenge up in the carousel, he might try to outbrake him there.
Uh-oh, here's a problem for the number 45 car. That's a turbocharged V6 Buick Hawk, Phil Cotty Racing, and Jim Crawford, who started 13th, moved up to 11th, is now stranded out on the racetrack. No power.
Well, Steve, like the Corvette of Vandermeer, that automobile shows terrific power on the faster straightaways. Here, though, at Sears Point, where the straights are relatively short, not quite the advantage. As we watch yet more of that race between Hurley Haywood and James Weaver. And Hurley Haywood dives underneath Weaver to take over that number 9 spot.
Well, the Jaguars have tremendous brakes on them, equal, in fact, to those of the Porsches that are just famed for their strength and power.
Okay, back to the leaders. Wallach down through turn number 4 continues to lead Price Cobb. Here they come down through that little Humpty Dumpty into that sweeping downhill turn number 5 and turn 6. And out ahead is the straightaway where the last lap, remember, Price Cobb tried to challenge on the outside heading into the carousel. Let's see whether he does it again. Yep, there he goes to the outside. Will he try it? No. Ducks back in. He's just taking a wider line into that corner, Steve.
That's right. That's an impossible task there because the shorter route obviously is down on the inside of that turn. And let's remember, with all of this driving here, it is very warm outside. There we see the Nissan car of Elliott Forbes Robinson. It is in the high 80s, maybe even the low 90s. And these cars are completely sealed up. They don't have very much ventilation. Most of the drivers, all of them as a matter of fact, are using what they call a cool suit. But how well they're working, we don't know.
Well, they sacrificed driver comfort for aerodynamics as we watch Elliott Forbes Robinson. That is a turbocharged V6 Nissan power, much like you see in the 300ZX on the street, modified for racing in this very special March chassis that they're carrying. Here comes Elliott challenging Jochen Mass down into turn number 11 and moves by him. Dives underneath in that very slippery 180-degree corner and moves up into the 7th spot.
And we'd like to thank the BF Goodrich Tire Company. And there goes Hurley Haywood by Moss. Maybe Moss has a problem. One thing he doesn't have a problem with is that in-car camera. It has provided some spectacular pictures today, and we thank BF Goodrich again for that.
Well, I wonder, Steve, whether or not Jochen has got some problems because all of a sudden, both Elliott Forbes Robinson and Hurley Haywood just burst past him. And remember, he had been well ahead of them for a number of laps. But Jochen seems to be carrying on, but it may be some braking problems. Maybe he's got the tires are going away on him. As you said earlier, all the tire manufacturers represented here have had problems getting the right combination on this very difficult racetrack.
Well, here the leaders sweep downhill out of the S's into turn number 10, headed for that hairpin turn number 11. Let's see if Cobb has any chance at all of outbraking the leader Wallach. No, I don't think so.
Well, what Price is doing with taking that high line into these hairpins, I think, is to get out of that groove where all that rubber and oil has been laid down. He may be having more tire problems perhaps than Wallach, and he's using that drier part of the racetrack, as it were, to brake. So he's not actually challenging Wallach in those hairpins, but merely using a better, more suitable part of the racetrack under hard braking.
You can see Wallach's car just there. It is starting to slide a little bit more. It's looser. Here is Jochen Mass coming into the pits. Now, this is way too soon to be a planned stop. There's a problem with that car. We saw him falling back, losing positions. He's bringing it in, hopefully, to get it repaired.
Well, that's a tough break for both him and his team and for us as well because he was providing us such excellent footage for that in-car camera. Although it looks as if they're going to stay in it, Steve, they're going to change front rubber. You can hear the air-powered impact wrench putting on fresh wheels and tires. So I would imagine that Jochen's going to get back in it.
And for our leaders, this lap, Brock, is a twin to the one before as they take different lines through the carousel, still a couple of car lengths apart.
So down toward the S's they go, still holding on to a commanding lead, these two automobiles, Bob Wallach and Price Cobb, two identical Porsches, as Jochen Mass, yes, back underway with our in-car camera, so we'll see more from him, but unfortunately he falls way back to 13th spot with that stop.
So Mass getting up to speed as he exits the pits and heads up towards turn number 1. Meanwhile, though, down in turn 11, some traffic. That is Tom Blockhaller, the smaller car, competing in the GTP light division. In fact, he's running second there, and he is now between our leaders. Well, he was. There goes Price Cobb just blowing by.
You can see the differentials in speed there with these bigger automobiles and the light machines. But nonetheless, we've got a pair of Porsches being driven by a veteran Frenchman and a brash young Texan here at Sears Point.
And here at Sears Point Raceway, we've got a new leader for you. Price Cobb in the number 16962 Porsche has moved around Bob Wallach with authority, Brock Yates.
He certainly has, Steve. In fact, with such authority that you wonder whether or not Bob Wallach's tires are beginning to go away on him. John Andretti and David Hobbs hold on to third and fourth with those two BMWs. Al Holbert in the fifth spot with his Porsche.
And the Corvette has now moved up into the top 10. Cyril van der Merwe has put that machine in the 9th spot.
And here is your race for the third spot. The two BMWs have Andretti and Hobbs holding off the championship automobile of Al Holbert and Derek Bell. That car, of course, the defending champion in the IMSA series. As they go down through that sweeping downhill turn number 4, heading still further downhill toward 5 and 6. It's Andretti. Right behind him, David Hobbs, and right behind them is Al Holbert, now being challenged by Pete Halsmer in the Probe. So we've got those third through 6th place automobiles right together, Steve.
Oh, some terrific racing here, Brock. And the BMW car is so strong. And look at this. It is Al Holbert, some smoke off the tires. Apparently the brakes locked up a little bit, Brock. He went wide, and that's going to cost him a position. He's now down to 6th.
Well, he just got in there too hot, I think. And this is another example of the difficulty that everybody has had setting their race cars up for this particular event. Al Holbert, you just seldom ever see him bobble like that. I think it was just a question of an undependable race car and tire setup, and just forced him to remember. He too got way wide, just like Price Cobb was doing, trying to get out there in that better traction, but it still didn't help him.
Well, Brock, this morning, Al Holbert admitted to both you and I his total frustration with this racetrack. He never seems to be able to hit his stride here.
That's right. And right now, though, he is moving up and holding on up amongst the leaders, but certainly not anywhere near the satisfaction levels that he usually finds when he sets that Porsche up.
Yeah, but how many races has Al Holbert won due to other people's misfortune? In fact, last weekend at Portland on the victory stand, he said, I feel almost embarrassed to be here.
Well, he seldom ever makes mistakes. In fact, when you just saw him a few moments ago lock those brakes up in the carousel, that'll be about as close to a big bobble as you'll ever see this man make. As we watch Pete Halsmer now trying to run down David Hobbs, and that battle for the 4th spot. So Pete Halsmer got a little bit of a break when Al Holbert bobbled in the carousel, and now moves in on David Hobbs. In turn, though, Hobbs now right on the rear spoiler of his teammate John Andretti coming off the carousel.
Well, Pete Halsmer, Brock, may be feeling an extra measure of pressure, knowing that Klaus Ludwig is sidelined and that Ford is really counting on him to do the job. And we know what a fine driver he is. Just recently we showed you winning in a Mercury McCore in the Trans Am Sedan Championship. So he can get the job done.
Oh, no question about that. Experience in these kind of cars and Indianapolis cars and other road racing machinery. So Pete Halsmer definitely up to the chore as he dives underneath David Hobbs to take over that 4th spot. Good piece of driving. We told you there was going to be a lot of passing going into that hairpin at the end of this racetrack, and sure enough, there it happens. Look at this.
This is Bob Wallach, the 2nd place car, coming into the pits. We suspicion that when Price Cobb got around him as easily as he did, that maybe the tires had lost their edge. They're putting on fuel and tires. Will there be a possible penalty here, Brock? Remember we talked about him maybe jumping the flag. Klaus Ludwig certainly thought that. And here comes George Ridenauer, an IMSA official. They're going to hold that car, but for how long?
Well, that's I really am surprised about that. I would have imagined had he jumped the start, they would have pulled him in and stopped him. But it may be you're right. Maybe they're going to hold him up for a minute. They certainly have an IMSA official standing right in front of that automobile as Wallach now gets underway, and it looked as if he was perhaps held up for a minute. So if Wallach was held for 5 seconds, as was about that amount of time in the pits, it was because IMSA thought he did jump the start. So Bob Wallach back underway, back in the 11th spot. Now let's go down to Steve to find out what happened.
George, you don't usually stand in front of race cars for no reason. I assume you were assessing a penalty there?
Yeah, we had a mild problem on the start. The pole cars are supposed to keep the same speed of the safety car as it pulls off the course and wait for the green flag to come out, and then they may start passing immediately. The pole car did not do that. In fact, he started going, and then sometime afterwards, the green came out. So we assessed a 5-second penalty to take care of that.
Thank you.
So a major disappointment for the Bob Wallach team as their man falls way back because of the 5-second penalty. All right, more action in the pits. That is John Andretti getting out of his BMW, currently up in the 3rd spot. Davy Jones, his co-driver, takes over. And we've heard that the cool suit mechanism, the box that keeps the cool suit cool, actually, the little refrigeration unit, broke loose and got into the cockpit with Andretti. So he had to stop. So suddenly, Price who will now come by the pits, and unless Andretti and Davy Jones can get underway, will put a full lap on them. All of a sudden, he has a full lap because of the stop by Bob Wallach, and then because of the stop of the 3rd place BMW. But remember now, Price Cobb cannot go the distance. He's going to have to stop, and it's very likely he will turn over the car to the car owner, Rob Dyson, a man who is a fine driver and is all right, but by his own admission may not be quite as quick as his co-driver.
Well, kind of like a spaceman, Rob Dyson has all these lines coming up from his back from the cool suit. And with this on, I assume you're going to do some driving today.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Price is doing a hell of a job. And, of course, the idea is this isn't a costume party. I'm hoping to get in the car shortly. It's really going to be Price's call, a lot of it, and we plan to put me in the car.
You generally bring Drake Olson along as part of the team. What's the story there?
Well, Drake is on a little get-your-head-together type of vacation.
I understand what you're saying. Well, Price is doing a wonderful job. How long will you stay in the car? Will you try to finish the race? And at what lap will you bring him in?
Well, we're not sure. You know, it depends on the fuel, and it seems like it's going a little bit further than we thought. But that's Price's call when he comes in, and then I'll go out and finish it off.
Okay, good luck to you.
You bet. Thanks.
So, car owner Rob Dyson fills in for young Drake Olson, who has had a few crashes too many for the owner's satisfaction. Gonna let him calm down a little bit before he gets back into the race car.
David Hobbs brings the number 19 BMW into the pits, and here is John Watson ready to relieve. Now, these two were spotted in full battle dress Friday, rehearsing, Brock, this driver exchange.
That is because a very long stop at Portland just a short time ago cost them the race. And it was because John Watson, who is primarily a Formula One driver, coming over here for a first season at IMSA, is just not as used to Hobbs getting all hooked up with those umbilical cords for the cool suit, the radio, and the very complicated seatbelt shoulder harness setup. So John Watson did do very nicely in that particular stop, and they're back underway. So they make a good, quick stop, quicker than their teammates Andretti and Davy Jones, and could be in a good position to move in on the leader, presumably after Price Cobb makes his stop. Now remember, these two BMWs started out this season, had some problems, were withdrawn for some extensive testing, and have come back here with some real power, running very well. Let's go to David Hobbs in the pits.
David, it looked like the practice you and John have been doing on the driver exchange paid off there. Nicely done.
Yeah, John got in the car great. Made a good job putting on the belts. I stayed and watched and didn't harass him like I might have done at Portland, which perhaps put him off a bit. Probably partly my fault. So he did a great stop, and he got out. I don't know how long it was, but it obviously wasn't too bad. And I assume, it's still in pretty good shape.
You hate to bring a car in when you're challenging like that for the lead, but apparently that's the strategy on a particular lap, huh?
Well, you've got to come in sooner or later for fuel, and obviously the Porsche's got to stop for fuel too sometime. And well, you've got to stop sometime.
You know, it looks like the time the team took off and went back to the laboratory, so to speak, is paying off today.
Oh, I think so, yeah. It paid off from Watkins Glen on, really. We ran very well at the Glen. We would have been second there for sure if we hadn't had a rotor brake, which is pretty unusual. Then last week at Portland, we had a very good run. So, yeah, I'd say that we're going to be competitive from here on in.
Thank you, David.
And some excellent drivers. The veterans Hobbs and Watson teamed up with the youngsters Andretti and Jones. So the BMWs are back in a big way. But right now, Price Cobb continues to lead it. Bob Wallach right behind him. They're trying to unlap himself. But we've got a whole bunch of pit stops coming up. Stick with us.
California Ford Grand Prix is in the pits. Price Cup has brought the number 16 Porsche in. Rob Dyson will take over. Just in front of them, that is the Ford Pro. Pete Holzberg is out, but instead of Lynn St. James, Klaus Ludwig will get into that car. And here comes Rob Dyson. A brilliant stop. He goes back out on the track, and that car still has the lead. Here is Al Holbert. The 14 car is in the pits, and Derek Bell, the very talented Englishman, World Endurance Champion, takes the wheel.
And Steve, you can count on a precision stop by this team. They always do it. The Ford Pro about ready to go with Klaus Ludwig at the wheel. Heel charge, you can be sure of that. So we've got an interesting scenario looming here as Rob Dyson is now about to be pursued by some really serious players. There goes the Porsche down off the jack stands, and he is underway. Derek Bell.
And Rob Dyson in the 16 car, he can expect some pressure very quickly. From the number 2 BMW now with John Watson at the wheel, car number 19. And also from Klaus Ludwig, who is on a tear in the probe. Let's go to Brock.
First of all, Price, super work. Put her out front and handed the ball to the boss.
Yeah, you know, I certainly hope. But Rob's been very, very fast all weekend, and this is the first chance I've ever had to personally try to set the car up the way I like it. It's getting to be very comfortable, very nice to drive. I really enjoyed racing with Bob Wallach at the start. They've given him the name, the Old Fox, and it certainly shows because he did nothing scary at all. Everything he did was just to use up my air and make it difficult for me to follow him closely, and it was quite enjoyable. I learned a lot.
So, apparently Bob Wallach putting on a little driving school for Price Cup. But what a battle we have got right now for the second position. Klaus Ludwig in the Ford Probe just in front of John Watson in the factory BMW. That's for second place. Here comes Watson on the outside. No, he's not going to do it there. Just balls in behind him, draft a little bit behind the Probe. Ludwig and Watson, two world-class drivers.
Oh, they bump going down into the hairpin in turn 11. It was Watson who just muscled his way by Klaus Ludwig. They bounced off each other under very hard braking, and it was Watson who came out the winner in that little dust-up. Here they come up through turn number 1, heading up the hill, and you can be sure that you have not heard the last from Klaus Ludwig. He is going to retaliate if humanly possible. He lost second place to a hard-charging John Watson, so Rob Dyson leads it. But remember, back and forth in this spot, we've got Davy Jones and Derek Bell, and Bell knows that he has got to charge if he's going to get up among the leaders. Wallach now worked his way back up to 6. Elliott Forbes Robinson driving solo, Steve, in that Nissan, holds on to 7.
Well, let's hope Elliott's cool suit works to perfection because with the temperatures outside, he's going to need every bit of it. There is Tom Blackaller. He is leading in the GT Light category. 6 cars started in that particular class. It's a race within a race, really. Only 5 are still out on the racetrack. Now, if you follow yachting at all, you have to know the name Tom Blackaller, one of the world's foremost sailmakers and skippers. He has won many, many titles in international competition and will be at the helm in Perth, Australia of the revolutionary USA boat out of the St. Francis Yacht Club here in the Bay Area. Now, why would a sailor used to the quiet of the sea go car racing?
Well, I started out racing cars, Brock, really to have a diversion from sailing. I've been racing sailboats more or less professionally for about 20 years. Been in the sail making business, and now these America's Cup efforts are very much professional sailing. We sail 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and I use the car racing as maybe businessmen might use golf to get away. Just getting in the cockpit of the car, and even if I'm going 200 miles an hour, for me it's real relaxing and just a hell of a lot of fun.
And how serious is Tom about regaining the America's Cup? There's a sticker on the car that says, we don't just want the cup, we want the whole damn island.
And notice that his little Mazda-powered tug is striped in red, white, and blue. So Tom is definitely getting into patriotic mood to go to Perth, Australia, and fight to get the cup back.
Uh-oh, there is a problem for John Watson. That is the BMW car that was running in the second position, and he is off the racetrack down in the turn 1 area, and looks like he got into that tire wall.
Boy, he got into a whole bunch. The rear spoiler is torn off that race car. Looks like they got a little bit of a fire underneath it. Watson in the automobile, apparently unhurt. And here comes the other BMW. BMW into the pits. What a disaster suddenly strikes the BMW team.
Now this is Davy Jones. He hasn't been in the car that long. And here is the man that started it, John Andretti, and he is going to get back into that car. And with this dual BMW disaster, Derek Bell is the benefactor. He puts the number 14 Porsche into the 3rd spot. Up ahead of him is Klaus Ludwig. And of course, leading the race is Rob Dyson.
Meanwhile, back in the very frustrated BMW pits, we see John Andretti exchanging places with Davy Jones. Davy Jones, as is the practice in prototype racing, helping his partner get hooked up in that race car. And a slow, agonizing effort always, but they try to get it done as quickly as possible. There goes Jones stepping back, door shut, and Andretti will get back underway. But it's a very confusing situation because Davy Jones, a fine young driver in his own right, suddenly out of the race car. We're not quite sure what happened. Maybe Steve will make his way down there to find out the exact cause here. But in the meantime, John Andretti charges back out onto the racetrack, trying to make up the time lost in that pit stop. There is Davy Jones. Steve is with him.
Davy went out there without a cool suit, I presume. It had to be rugged.
Well, you know, in this racing, you always try and get yourself mentally prepared for the race. Going out there without the cool suit wasn't my intentions. But what can I say? The bracket broke on the cool box, and cool suit probably would have worked, but your body can't breathe without it.
Did you hope to finish the race in that car?
I had hoped to finish the race, yeah, and I believe I could have maintained a much faster pace. But I was just getting really hot. I was starting to breathe heavy, and you know, it probably would have been different if I could have really thought about it without the cool suit, which I will do from now on.
Take a long drink of water. You deserve it.
Thank you.
So Davy Jones, along with his teammate John Andretti, two of the rising young stars in this sport, but a frustrating afternoon for them so far. Okay, let's go back to the race for 4th. Bob Wallach, the 85 car that started on the pole. Hurley Haywood, the 04 Jaguar, been up among the leaders most of the day. And the solo driver, Elliott Forbes Robinson, rounding out that little trio. As they better look at this. Tom Blackhaller up into the weeds, Steve, in a big way.
Absolutely. That car has suffered some severe front-end damage. Blackhaller appears to be all right. Apparently just jibbed when he sort of jibed.
What a tough break for Tom, who is leading that GT light class at that point. There you see him just off the racetrack in the S's and way up the hill. We don't know whether something broke on the race car or whether he got into some oil or just bobbled a little bit, but whatever. He's up among the gopher holes here at Sears Point and most certainly out for the day.
Well, he's going to find waves off of Perth as tall as that hill, so maybe this was a good experience for him.
Well, we know that Tom is one of the most competitive guys that we've encountered in a long time, so he'll be back not only on the racetracks, but in the America's Cup as well. Look at this. More disasters for the Ford people.
Klaus Ludwig is 2 for 2. He's gotten the 2 Mustang probes. Both have broken down. The first one he limped back to the pits. Maybe not this time.
This tree-lined driveway in the Napa Valley is bordered on both sides by these beautifully tended and manicured vineyards. Some of the richest soil and richest farmland in the entire world, right here up the road from Sears Point International Raceway, Steve.
And at the Raceway, Brock, for the second time, number 85, Bob Wallach, is in the pits. This time there is a driver change. Young Paulo Barilla from Parma, Italy, will take the wheel from Wallach. And Wallach deserves a rest after what he's been through today.
Well, here comes the BMW of John Watson minus its rear wing. You can see that the tail is radically altered on that race car as Watson climbs out. Now, I'm not sure whether they're going to try to carry on, whether or not David Hobbs will get back into the race car, but look at the rear end. The aerodynamics have to be just torn to bits, as it were, because you cannot run a ground effects prototype car like this without a big rear wing on it.
Here's our leader, number 16, Rob Dyson. Just behind him is Derek Brassfield, the number 68 Porsche. Now, Brassfield is a lap down.
Well, Brassfield taking over for Jochen Mass. As we see, we've got 4 different makes of cars up among the top 5. The Corvette of Doc Bundy in 5th. Elliott Forbes Robinson's Nissan. Brian Redmond taking over for Hurley Haywood in the Jaguar up in the 3rd spot.
Well, like I said, Darren Brassfield was a lap down. Well, the car we're running in right now is actually 2 laps down in that 10th spot.
Well, we talked about some young Chargers earlier. Boy, you got to put Darren Brassfield in it. Darren from just down the road in San Jose, California, runs the big GTO-type automobiles with as much authority as these prototypes, and he is our Charger. Well, now John Watson has reconsidered apparently and has climbed back into that number 19 BMW as the crew continues to kind of wrench the rear end back into shape. They're putting the door back on, and John will go out and soldier onward, but he's got problems. Steve is down there.
Well, Brock, one of the BMW crewmen ran back to the transporter to get a new wing for the John Watson car, and here is that wing. That's just fine, except they have no mounting brackets for it. And to contrive something to get on the back of the car, well, the race would be over by then. So they have sent him out without a wing. That will be one evil handling race car.
Absolutely. As we watch Bob Earl in the Pontiac-powered GT light car, a car that has run very strongly, won some of these races heretofore. He's had some problems out here today, but believe me, Bob Earl is one of the finest race drivers that we know of. And that little Gordon Spice built chassis is a car that may very well lead Pontiac and Bob Earl perhaps into running the full-size prototypes in the near future. So Bob Earl carrying on in the GT light category in the 4th spot as he heads down the pit straight to complete another lap. Earl is driving a highly interesting little automobile, as we said. Pontiac powered, the Iron Duke in the engine bay of that car. And earlier, Steve had a chance to take a look at that automobile.
Want to peek into the future, what the 1990 Pontiac Fiero might look like? Well, you may be seeing a strong hint of that styling in the Pontiac GTP light car racing today. Now, the Pontiac engineers assigned to design this race car, and it was designed in Detroit. First thing they did was go upstairs to styling and said, hey, guys, what do you think the 1990 car might look like? They saw some drawings and said the front end is perfect. It looks aerodynamically just what we're looking for. Now, we will have to narrow up the cab a little bit. After all, we only need one guy in here, and extend the sides to get our radiators and all in. But there's a good chance that you're seeing a bit of the future in this automobile. That's in styling. As far as the power plant is concerned, you're looking in some ways as a bit of the past, because that 4-cylinder iron motor in there has been available since 1977, the old Iron Duke that has its roots in the Chevrolet small block V8. In fact, that's the same power plant you'll find in the showroom today in the 4-cylinder Pontiac. Here it's punched out to about 182 cubic inches. Now, the cylinder head is the aluminum crossflow. That's available from Pontiac in their Super Duty catalog, and so is the Kensler Pontiac fuel injection. So all of these are parts that you could get right now. Anybody can buy, and this car has won 6 out of 9 pole positions this year.
Highly interesting race car as we watch the number 14 Porsche being driven right now by Derek Bell. He is carrying on in 2nd spot. Derek, as we said earlier, along with teammate Al Homer, have had their share of problems, but they haven't had their share of problems as far as consistency is concerned. They have relied on attrition on the part of the competition to slowly move up, and now to take a solid hold on 2nd place. Now, I think the interesting point right here, Steve, is whether or not this veteran, and speaking of veterans, that's Brian Redmond, who's taken over for Hurley Haywood. He is also, through consistency, moved up into 3rd spot. The question is whether or not the veteran Derek Bell and perhaps Brian Redmond can overtake the less experienced Rob Dyson, who holds on to the lead here at Sears Point.
And Bell has 12 laps in which to accomplish that.
That is the 3rd place Jaguar, veteran Brian Redmond here at the California Ford Grand Prix, Sears Point International Raceway. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans, and right behind him, Elliott Forbes Robinson driving solo in the V6 Nissan. Both these automobiles have benefited from the massive attrition here. We've seen both Ford probes go out, and both BMWs that started up front have problems.
With 10 laps to go, here's how it sets up. All of the top 5 here, led by Rob Dyson, are on the same lap, as is the 6th place car, Paulo Barilla. Now, how bad is the attrition rate, Ben? Look at 9th and 10th. Those are GT light cars that have moved up into the top 10. Howard Katz and Jim Downing, mainly because so many cars have been sidelined with problems.
This is one of the few that has had no real problems. That's the Elliott Forbes Robinson Nissan rounding the carousel. Elliott, his cool suit working absolutely perfect. He is very comfortable, say his crew in the car, hence his ability to go without any help. All right, there is trouble. That is the number 52 Corvette of Doc Bundy and Sarah Vandermeer in the pits. The rear hood section up, and there is apparently engine problems that is going to sideline that automobile. They've had problems most of their day, so were never really major factors in this event. There's the leader. And that man is doing a super job considering his relative lack of experience. He is just a novice compared to the man that's trying to chase him down, Derek Bell, but he's doing a terrific job. Rob Dyson, only in racing a few years, most of his time spent behind pit wall as a car owner. He climbs into the race car periodically, and now filling in for Price Cobb and doing a sensational job. But we understand all is not well with Rob. There are reports that he's very uncomfortable in the race car and beginning to falter a bit. Let's go to Steve in his pit.
Well, Brock, Pat Smith, the crew chief on the Rob Dyson number 16 car, just told Price Cobb to put his suit on. Apparently the cool suit is not working for Dyson. He's not had that much time in the car all season long. They keep crashing it before he gets to drive. So there's a chance, if they're not under too much pressure, that Pat may put Price Cobb back in the car. At least he's going to have that driver ready.
So there is the Rob Dyson crew, obviously concerned about their boss and may make a driver change. That is the number 5 Bob Aiken automobile, driven periodically by Hans Stuck in such spectacular fashion. Here today, Bob Aiken teaming up with James Weaver. They are in the pits, and it looks like Aiken is out and the car is sidelined for the afternoon.
Indeed it is, Brock. That car came in on fire, as a matter of fact. Hey, here's a great little race for the lead in GT Light. 73, Howard Cat, just coming through the frame, and there you see number 63. That is Jim Downing, who has won so many of these light races.
Actually, only 2 other cars running. Mike Meyer in 3rd spot. Bob Earl well back after a number of unscheduled stops. Tom Blackaller, of course, we saw him crash after leading the class for a number of laps.
And even though he did crash, he can't do worse than 5th because there's only 4 cars left out there. The most important 2 are right there, 73 Howard Katz and 63 Jim Downing. Now these cars are very similar, in many cases exactly the same as the bigger GTP cars in construction. It's those little motors that makes the difference.
Well, you can see right now, though, the speed differential as John Andretti moves through the Katz and Downing pair as they move down into the hairpin. And there goes Andretti in that more powerful BMW. And moving up behind now is Rob Dyson, the leader. Although Andretti looks like he's in front of Dyson, he's actually a full lap down. So Rob Dyson going by a very concerned pit crew here. And he has been telling them, I understand on the radio, Steve, that he's getting awfully hot out there.
Indeed, Brock, but I tell you, he sure is driving skillfully. He maneuvered past that traffic very, very nicely. And there's the light cars. They are still going at it. And Jim Downing now moving right up on the tail of Howard Katz.
These automobiles are all normally aspirated, no turbocharging allowed. The Downing car, like many of them, is Mazda powered. That's an Argo. But the leader, Katz, is running with a new V6 Chevrolet in his engine bay, Steve. And that car is being touted as a comer in this class.
Absolutely. The Mazda has been so dominant, but now you're seeing some factory involvement from Buick, from Pontiac, and even Chevrolet. Jim Downing, however, right now having to settle for 2nd spot. Downing trying to gun down Howard Katz. Downing is the national points leader in the class.
Yes, and one of the pioneers in light racing, has been around and really understands the Mazda power plant about as well as anybody in racing. His chassis is an English-built Argo. Katz is running in a Taiga, also built in the United Kingdom. In fact, an awful lot of these light cars are fabricated that way. English chassis with American or Japanese power plants.
And far more affordable to race than the GTP cars. You could probably do it for 30%, maybe even less than that, of the budget it'd take to run a 962 Porsche. Now here, coming into turn number 11, Downing in the 63 car. This is a place we've seen so much passing, and we're going to see one right now, I believe, Brock.
Well, can he drag race him off the corner? There is a left-hander coming up, and Katz should have the advantage there, but he can't hold off Jim Downing. Downing heading up the hill will take over the lead in light in a daring pass. So as they head up through turn number 2, it's Jim Downing in the Mazda-powered Argo driving past the V6 Taiga of his chief rival, Howard Katz.
Downing now in command. The big question is, can Rob Dyson, who is leading this race in the GTP class, can he physically hang on for the remaining 4 laps? Stay with us.
Watches tell us that Rob Dyson clings to a 23-second lead over the veteran Derek Bell as the California Ford Grand Prix begins to reach the final stages. We know that he's fatigued. We know that the cool suit apparently is not operating, and the man is racing under enormously difficult conditions. But believe it or not, Steve Evans, it has not been to the advantage of Derek Bell. One would have thought that Bell would have easily overtaken the less experienced Rob Dyson, but that has not been the case.
Well, Dyson has summoned up everything he's got, Rock, and just poured it into trying to win this race. It would be the first time that he as a driver in GTP competition has seen that checkered flag. He's seen his hired hands do it, but Derek Bell, he could still play a major role in this thing.
Absolutely, Steve. In fact, I'm sure that Derek is going to let Dyson lose the race, not try to win it himself. His tires are not that effective. The race car isn't working that well. He is going to count on perhaps Rob missing a shift, missing a braking point, becoming overly fatigued, or worst of all, having to make a late race pit stop, which would assure him defeat because they can't possibly stop and change drivers and win the race. So let's go to Steve to find out what is happening with Bryce Cobb, his co-driver.
Bryce, what are the chances of you getting back in the car? I know you'd hate to give up that time on the track, but Rob may be broiling in there.
Rob is dying. Apparently something's wrong with his cool suit. I think he's just got a tube pinched on himself because it worked flawlessly for me. Apparently he's really dying, and the water bottle is either out of water or the tube is also pinched. So he's having difficulties, and he's got enough lead. If he really concentrates, I honestly believe he can finish and win the race. So, you know, I hope and pray that he'll be all right and that he can finish the race first.
Well, Rob soldiers on the last lap. Take your helmet off, Price. It is apparent that Dyson will finish this race for better or for worse. Only about 10 more corners are left here on this 2.52-mile circuit for him to circulate, and he must do it if he's going to win it. Right behind him, one of the greatest endurance drivers in the history of the sport, dogging him around. This man, Derek Bell, in the number 14 all-winning Porsche 962 of Al Holbert, just sitting there, primed to move in with the slightest bobble on the part of Rob Dyson.
And in the driver's points for the season, Derek Bell is second only to the boss, Al Holbert. They lead at 1 and 2. And Brock, even before the checkered flag, Rob Dyson has already been named the winner of one award, the $1,500 prize called the Norelco Cup, voted on by the press. It doesn't have to be the winner of the race, the outstanding drive of the race. So that's going to go to Rob Dyson.
Well, Steve, not to belabor the point, but you can absolutely cook in one of these race cars. You can see that they are totally enclosed for aerodynamic purposes. They need the cool suit in high temperatures. If not, the turbocharger that's right behind them, that very powerful 700 horsepower engine mounted right behind your seat, just percolates the interior of that race car.
Well, here comes Rob Dyson down into the hairpin, turn number 11, not that far from being within sight of the checkered flag. The crew right now knows that they are going to win this race. Thumbs up to Dyson as he heads through turn number 12, up towards the checkered flag, and there it is. Bryce Cobb congratulates crew chief Pat Smith, who did such a brilliant job today. They had one of the best stops of any of the teams. So Rob Dyson, the number 16 Porsche, will win it here today. This team, we saw last year win the Columbus 500, among others, and also at Riverside this year. And here's the second place driver, Derek Bell.
Heading down into the hairpin to complete his final lap and to finish almost assuredly a second place. But I'm sure also that he and Holbert are a bit disappointed. They were never really able to challenge for the lead the way they like to. So they kind of backed into a second spot placing here at Sears Point. A good effort compared to a lot of other guys who had much more trouble than they. But not a great day for them overall. But for this man, a championship drive. Rob Dyson, the winner here in the California Ford Grand Prix. We'll be back to talk with him about what has to be the most challenging race of his short career. Came oven-like temperatures to win here at Sears Point, and Steve is down there with the winner, Rob Dyson.
Okay, Rob Dyson cooled off in the car by the crew and finally being extracted from the winning 962 Porsche. Kind of like riding around in a 160-mile-an-hour baked potato, Rob. You feeling okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling fine. I feel $1,500 better now that I won a Norelco Cup, I can tell you that. Seriously, you know, drivers really fulfill a small part of this effort. This crew, which has shown itself repeatedly this season, time and time again.
Here's Price Cobb, co-driver.
Time and time again, they've given Price and I the kind of car that we can win with, and the guys have never let us down, not for 1 minute. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be associated with these members of my family.
I'll tell you, Price was ready to go back into that car if you needed him.
Yeah, he was, but I'm glad he didn't, because I think we would have probably bobbled it. And, you know, whenever you have a pit stop, you always have the liability of screwing up. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just pleased and proud and honored to be associated with these gentlemen. They really know how to make a car run, and fortunately Price Cobb knows how to set one up to let an old guy like me win a Norelco Cup like this. And that, I just want to tell you, the Norelco Cup is really a team award. Granted, it came to me, but Price did one hell of a job, and I think that he deserves the kind of recognition that a true pro and a true champion deserves.
And we're proud to have been here to enjoy it with you. Thank you.
Well, appreciate it, Steve, and we hope all the fans enjoyed the show.
Okay, let's go to Brock. He's already up in the winner's circle with second place.
Well, with Al Holbert, who with Derek Bell made a valiant effort, but you seem kind of resolved to it, Al. I know you guys tried very hard, but as you told me middle of the race, that you just sort of it seeming at least implied that it wasn't going to be your day.
No, well, we feel good about, you know, finishing second, although I like to win. We just weren't fast enough. The 16 car, the Dyson Cobb car, was just better set up, and just had we could run through the fast stuff, but we just couldn't figure it out for the slow stuff, and they deserved it. They drove well, and I'm glad to see Porsche win if the Lowenbrow Porsche can't.
Derek seemed to be coming off this corner, the last corner here, very hard, but the car looked as if it was very squirrely, and I would imagine in some of the slower corners that maybe he was just having trouble hanging on.
Yeah, I don't think we were putting the power down too well, and we ran a differential, which is really not normal for us. I came out of last year's race and said positively I have to run a diff next year, and in the meantime Goodyear came up with a better car and probably could have done without, I don't know, but well, we'll just keep trying.
You're trying mighty well indeed. A beautiful second place, considering the fact that you had a bad day in qualifying, really, and didn't start the car very well and worked your way up through the field.
It's tough starting back there. I'll tell you, this is getting so competitive in IMSA that you got to start up front if you want to run up front, because if you don't, you use the car up an awful lot, and you use old guys like me up too.
Congratulations anyway. Good job. Thanks.
And now let's go to Steve with the winner of that terrific GT Light battle.
We've heard all this talk about cool suits and relief drivers. Jim Downing, you won the light division with no relief whatsoever. You drove the entire race yourself.
Well, I had an artificial relief. I came in and changed cool suit packs, so it would be cold the second half of the race, and I want to tell you, it made all the difference.
You may have taught everybody something with that little maneuver.
Well, I think I picked up 8 seconds a lap at that point. I was fading.
So the more refreshed you are, the quicker you go, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. The less mistakes you make, your tires feel better, your engine runs better if you're cooler.
The 73 car was challenging there for a while.
He was. He really ran an awfully good race. Let me have a clean pass in the end. It's a developing team, and those guys are going to look real good soon.
Take a big swig of that water. You deserve it.
So the big story here is Rob Dyson, who bested the veteran Derek Bell, but believe me, the Jaguars, the Nissans, and the BMWs will round out the top 5. They'll be back, and Jim Downing, of course, wins in the light category. A day of high attrition and intense competition here at Sears Point. And there's a little thanks to us, and we'll pass it on. Thank you for joining us.
The executive producer of Diamond P Sports is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. This special presentation of American Sports Cavalcade has been brought to you by B.F. Goodrich TA Radials, built for you to take on the road. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Lowenbrow, brewed in the great beer drinking countries of the world. This world calls for Lowenbrow. American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.